Hello everybody and welcome again to EnglishLogica.com's vocabulary building series. Today we are going to look at some vocabulary related to the word speaking. So let's get started. As usual, we split our vocabulary into two sections. The first is synonyms, the second is idioms. So let's look at synonyms for speaking. In our common use column, we will be covering stutter, stammer, rant, murmur, gibberish, drone, articulate, monotone, and babble. And there are some more on the next page. But in our advanced exams, so the more sophisticated language that you'll find in exams like GRE, GMAT, LSAT, etc., we will cover blather, drawl, gabber or jabber, parley, and witter. And the rest in our common use: prattle, blab, rabbit, and mumble. So let's get started with common use. Our first word is stutter. This is to talk with the continued repeating of sounds. So stutter is a North American or US English term, as opposed to the British English stammer. They both mean the same thing. It's when someone can't seem to get a word out or they can't complete it easily. They are stuttering. So stuttering. This is actually a speech condition that some people receive therapy for. So example one, he was so nervous that he started stuttering. It took him a while to get his words out. Example two, we noticed that our little girl was developing a stutter, so we took her to a speech therapist. And stammer, the same meaning, is to talk with continued repeating of sounds. This is the UK or British English equivalent of stutter. Sometimes it can be the elongation of sounds in a word. So it's not just that you can't get the beginning out. Like if you were trying to say sometimes, you might be sometimes. It can also be sometimes. There are different ways that a stutter or a stammer can manifest, and there are probably many more than what I've just shown there. So example one, he stammered through his sentences, sometimes dragging out the beginning of words. Example two, it can be hard to focus on what she's saying because she speaks with a bit of a stammer. So our next word is rant. This is to speak or shout in an angry way. So when you rant, you usually go on about something for a long time. So to go on about something just means that you talk at length about something, or you repeatedly are talking about it. That's going on about. So you usually go on about something for a long time in either an impassioned or angry manner. And the word impassioned there just means to do something with passion. A rant can be a long-winded complaint about something or someone. So example one, the man erupted into a rant about climate change when all I wanted was a plastic cup. Example two, will you please stop ranting about your problems? Everyone has problems. Our next word is murmur. This is to speak in a low and unclear manner. If someone is murmuring, you won't hear their words clearly. They'll be indistinct. A murmur can also be a continuous droning sound in the background. It's because you can't make out the words clearly, it just seems like it's a constant drone. So example one, I can't understand a word you're saying. You're murmuring. Speak up. Example two, I couldn't focus on the movie. All I could hear was the murmur of some guy a few rows behind me. Next word is gibberish. This is nonsense or meaningless speech. Sometimes foreign languages can seem unintelligible to us. Unintelligible just means something that you can't make sense of. So some people might be insulting and say that another language sounds like gibberish, and that the language is made up of sounds and words that we can't understand. So he had been out in the sun so much that his head was pounding and he was speaking gibberish. Example two, I can't understand a word you're saying. You drank too much alcohol and now you're just talking gibberish. So our next word is drone, and we mentioned drone earlier. It's a continuous background sound. The thing to remember about a droning sound is that it is low frequency. So think of the bass sounds from your speaker and imagine the same sound going on all the time. So similar to a hum droning sound just going on all the time. Example 1, I can't concentrate with those people constantly droning on behind me. Example 2, what's that terrible drone? It's giving me a headache. Example 3, he's so boring sometimes. He just drones on and there's never a point to his stories. Our next word is articulate. This is to speak clearly and accurately. Now, it's about speaking clearly, but it's also about being in possession of the words and concepts and abilities to ensure that everyone understands what you're saying. Remember that you can articulate something, that's the verb to articulate, or you can be articulate, where the word be is the verb and articulate is the adjective. I'm sorry, I pronounced that incorrectly. You can be articulate. So remember, the verb is to articulate, the adjective is to be articulate. So example 1, I've always loved listening to her speaking. She's so articulate and has people hanging on her every word. Example 2, he articulated the problem clearly and concisely. The next word is monotone. This is sound with no change in pitch or expression. If something is monotonous, it is boring. When someone speaks in a monotone manner, the pitch or tone of their voice doesn't change, and it's hard to identify their emotions or expressions. So example 1, I couldn't really follow what he was saying. His voice is so monotone that it's hard to focus. Example 2, the way she delivered the lecture was so monotonous that most people fell asleep. Our next word is babble. This is to speak quickly and excitedly. So it's often used in terms of babies. Babies babble. So they're just they're babbling. So it's similar to gibberish in the sense that babbling is hard to understand, but not because the words are nonsense. Babbling causes a loss of coherence, and people get mixed up with what they are saying. Example 1, will you just stick to the point? You're babbling now, jumping from one point to another. Example 2, I couldn't keep track of his babble. He couldn't seem to finish one sentence without starting another. Our next word is prattle. This is to talk for a long time without any point. So it's a bit of an insult to say that someone is prattling or prattling on. You might talk about to prattle on. You might hear someone using this in an argument to accuse the other person of being annoying when they speak. You're just prattling on now. Oh, example 1, the old ladies prattled on for hours, having not seen each other for years. Example 2, I've had enough of your prattle. This is all so pointless. Our next word is blab. This is to reveal secrets or to speak out of turn. And we'll come back to speak out of turn later on in our idioms. So it's similar to blurting something out, where you speak without thinking. The difference is that blabbing about something is considered intentional and often with purpose. So blurting is just like and you blurt something out without thinking. You go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But blabbing is usually that you intended to say it. You intended to spill the beans or to share a secret. So example 1, I trusted you with that secret. Why did you have to blab to your friends about it? Example 2, I don't know who to speak to about this. I don't want someone blabbing about it to everyone on social media. Our next word is rabbit. This is to talk for a long time or to talk for too long a time. It's similar to prattling, where someone talks for a long time about trivial matters. Okay, trivial just means things that don't matter very much. But generally, prattling happens in conversation. A person can rabbit on all on their own. Example 1, he stood up to give his lecture, but because he was so nervous, he started rabbiting on about what he had for breakfast. Example 2, don't rabbit on so much. You need to focus on the subject at hand. Our next word is mumble. This is to speak quietly and incoherently. If a person is mumbling, you can't even make out the words they are saying. You might hear bits of words here and there, leaving you to string their sentences together. Example 1, I can't hear what you're saying. Stop mumbling. Example 2, she's not very confident, so she tends to mumble when she's asked a question. So now we moved on to our advanced exam synonyms, so a bit more sophisticated language, or language that you won't hear in everyday speech amongst native English speakers. So blather. This is to talk for a long time without a point. So again, it's similar to some of the other words, but this is blather. Blathering can be annoying, and you can get sick of people talking about things that have no substance. Blathering can make no sense or have no context or specific subject in mind. So example one, we sat down to enjoy a meal, and she just started blathering about crystals and speaking with ghosts. Example two, I hate it when people blather on about things they know nothing about. So the next word is drawl. This is slow, lazy sounding speech. Because there are people who speak with a drawl, stretching out their vowels and taking longer. Sometimes people are presented as less intelligent when they drawl, but this isn't necessarily the case. Example one, he spat on the ground and then spoke to me with a terrible drawl that I found so boring and unintelligible. Example two, the people of that area were known for their strong drawl as well as their strong smell. The next word is gabber or jabber, and this is to talk quickly and excitedly. When people gabber or jabber, they're not making any sense. So imagine someone so excited that they can't wait to tell you everything. They just blurt out all their words and speak rapidly. Example one, the children started jabbering about their day at the amusement park, but it was hard to make any sense of what they were saying. Example two, there's no need to gabber like that. Slow down when you're talking. Our next word is parley. This is a discussion between opposing sides in a dispute. So it's a very old-fashioned term. You might think of this in terms of a conference or a diplomatic meeting. You might hear it a lot in pirate movies, for example. Pirates of the Caribbean, you'll hear people coming together to parley. The idea is to come to an agreement that suits both sides, like a truce or a temporary ceasefire. So example one, the two leaders met at the castle for a parley to determine how best to proceed. Example two, without parley, there was little chance that the fighting would stop. There didn't seem to be anything they agreed on. Our next word is witter. Speak for a long time about trivial issues. So when people talk about someone wittering on, it's usually used in relation to old women, or maybe just women in general. Now, you should keep in mind that this could be seen as a sexist remark, as if women are the only people who talk about things that don't matter. Example one, he decided to leave his wife with the other women, wittering away about things he didn't care about. Example two, I wish you wouldn't witter on so much about the family. No one's interested. So that's the end of our synonyms, and now we're going to look at some idioms related to speaking. So we're going to cover talk the legs off a donkey. He'd talk for Ireland or England or whatever your country is. You can substitute in there. It speaks volumes about something. Speak the same language. Speak out of turn. On speaking terms or not on speaking terms. Speak your mind. Speak for yourself. Speak ill of. And you should talk. So we're going to give you some examples of each one of these. So this can be used, talk the legs off a donkey, or sometimes I think the older term is to talk the hind legs off a donkey. So the idea is that you would just keep talking. I hate bumping into him in the street. He keeps me talking for ages. That guy would talk the legs off a donkey. This is similar then when someone says that they could talk for their country as if it was a competitive sport. That's really the idea, you know. If I was going on and on and on, someone might say, oh, he could talk for Ireland. So she just goes on and on and on. I swear that girl could talk for Ireland. Next idiom is to speak volumes about something. Okay, so this is that something is implied by an action. So something you do speaks volumes about something else without, so it's like the action speaks for you and explains why you're doing it without you having to do it at all, or without you having to explain something. So she keeps saying she doesn't care, but the way she just left the room when the subject came up spoke volumes about how she really feels. Okay, so the point is that she says she doesn't care, but clearly she does because she left the room when the subject came up. So it's the act of leaving the room that speaks volumes about how she feels. It explains or it implies how she feels. So to speak the same language. Now, this is similar to being on the same page. You might have heard the expression to be on the same page as someone else. So it just means that you share the same interests and you're you have maybe come to an unspoken agreement, or you get on very well, that you speak the same language as someone else, that you've the same ideas about how the world should be, the same worldviews, the same interests. So I get on so well with her and we can talk for hours about anything. She just speaks the same language as me in terms of music, books, movies, everything. So to speak out of turn. So this isn't just about imagine yourself being in a circle and then it's your turn to speak. It's not that literal. This is to speak out of turn when it's almost like it's not your place. You may not be welcome to speak at that time, or what you're saying or what you're trying to say is not a welcome subject, or is not something that the other person might want to hear. I know you're upset right now, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but are you sure that was the right thing to do? So when this person says they don't want to speak out of turn, they know that they're saying something that could be even more upsetting, or they don't want to rock the boat, is another way of putting it. So on speaking terms. So if someone isn't on speaking terms, it just means that they're not speaking, but it's not really that literal. It just means that there's something wrong and they're not as close as they were, or they've had an argument or a falling out. That couple usually looks so happy, but they're not exactly on speaking terms right now. I think they had a big argument last week. So to speak your mind, you probably know this one. This is just to say what you're thinking, to get your thoughts out. So sometimes you just have to speak your mind when people are treating you badly. The problem is dealing with the consequences. Speak for yourself. Now, this is an interesting one because this is saying to someone that you don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, and that the other person might have stated something designed to speak for everyone in the group, as if they're representative of that person. And when you say speak for yourself, that means you don't necessarily agree with what they've said. Okay. So what do you mean we don't need anything to eat? Speak for yourself. I'm starving. So to speak ill of, this is pretty straightforward. To speak ill of someone is to talk badly about them, or to say bad things or unkind things about them. And a full sort of version of this idiom, or a more full version, is to speak ill of the dead. This is a very well known one. So I know they say you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but he really wasn't a nice man. I don't think he'll be missed. Now, you should talk. This is another interesting one. It's about hypocrisy, and it's about calling people out for being hypocritical. If we know what hypocritical means, it means that uh, you are accusing someone of doing something, but you do it yourself. So being a hypocrite is doing something that you tell other people they shouldn't do. And so we do the example, and I'll explain how it works. So why are you shouting at him like that? You said he leaves clothes around the house, but you should talk. Your room's a mess. So when they say, but you should talk, is you're saying you're being a hypocrite. Who are you to say that when you do the same thing? Okay. So that's all our vocabulary for speaking, related to speaking. So we hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, there's lots more free content on EnglishLogica.com. So do visit us and check out our thousands of pages of content. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the box or in the comment section under this video on YouTube. Or you can always contact us via Facebook or Twitter. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.